So I used muscovado sugar, equal parts muscovado sugar and bleach white sugar. And then I put in a blood orange juice instead of a water just to kind of help increase the little bit of bitterness, a little bit of oranginess, a little bit of like richness to the texture. I put in a little bit of MSG and a little bit of rice vinegar. And that kind of helps it balance the drink closer to how a curacao would. And then orange peels of one standard Caracara orange and then one that I toasted. And then that one has so many ingredients. I use like a morning juice blend from Nudson's. It's like apple, pineapple, guava, papaya, or not guava, but papaya. And then non-alcoholic wine adjacent bitter thing from a company called For Bitter For Worse. It's called Saskatoon. It's got like service berries or Saskatoon berries in it. And then a Marionberry jam, and then or syrup rather, and then sherry. Pedro Jimenez sherry.
Welcome to Crying in the Walk-In.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Cheers.
Link.
Okay. Welcome back, babies. Welcome back, cry babies.
Cry babies.
I'm Sam.
Okay.
And today we're here with our friend Kayleigh.
Wee.
Hello.
Hi, Kayleigh. How are you today?
I'm doing better now that my heart rate has reduced after parking in the downtown areas.
When I was coming to get you from the front of the building, I saw you doing your breaths. It looked like I was like,
I was indeed doing my breath work.
They had a hard time finding parking.
Well, I could have just let that heart rate riding high, or I could take a couple seconds, do a little square breathing.
Yeah. Oh, I love a good square breathing.
We love a good square breathe.
Oh my gosh, have we all been to therapy? It sounds like it.
Okay, Kayleigh. So tell us a little bit about your history in the industry. I mean, we specifically wanted to have you on because of your knowledge and expertise in NAs. Mm-hmm. But what's your full background, or as much as you want to give us?
How did all of this come to be, as it were?
How are you on my sofa right now?
Life has been odd and fun and circuitous and bounced around from place to place. I'll skip over the kind of not related jobs.
Sure, yeah.
But I, in high school, worked doing kind of like prep kitchen stuff for the Renaissance Fair.
Yeah.
We'd make like chocolate covered bananas and cut up watermelon for like cantaloupe cups of fruit and all that kind of stuff.
That's so funny. What Renaissance Fair?
It was the Renaissance Pleasure Fair in Southern California, which is like the original fair, and it's huge. I think it's like the third biggest in the country.
Oh, wow. So a lot of bananas.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The bananas I have seen, I did do the math to calculate how many once, and it was daunting. It was very daunting. Well, and I have a vendetta to bananas to this day, but for a totally different reason.
Oh, sure. I too hate bananas.
And we can get into that one later when we talk about things that made us cry.
Okay,
oh,
cool.
Boy.
So we'll circle back.
We'll circle back on that one.
Cool. So after the Ren Fair, where'd you go?
So, gosh, a million different things. I moved to Seattle, did retail. I was a street canvasser for a second.
How was that?
I
bet it was rough.
It helped me build some resilience, for
absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely.
Don't recommend, but
Sure.
power to them. I worked at like a Joann's Craft and Fabric for a while. So I'll skip over that thing. But then I got a job at Starbucks finally, the quintessential Seattle thing that you do. And I worked at the shipping container store on 15th.
Okay.
In Ballard for a while.
Yes.
In 15 in Ballard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Which was a drive-through only, which was very fun because the vibe inside was a little bit more like what you would see in a bar because there was nobody who could witness us talking to each other. We could all hear each other over the headset and just say each other things to one another, which was a very cool vibe.
Yeah.
But then around this time, the Starbucks Reserve Roastery and Tasting Room had just opened in Capitol Hill. And they had mistakenly, for their whole first opening team, hired only 30 people who were all managers.
Yeah. Too many cooks.
That seems like that's a huge oversight for a giant company.
You're well, it's kind of hard because it's like you think like, oh, these are our most qualified and like most experienced and all of that, but you get too many of the same personality. Like teams got to be built with different assets, baby.
Yeah, you got too many type A people just in one room all trying to run the same thing.
Everybody's really ambitious. Everybody wants to be the star, but different skill sets.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I did end up having some really great mentors there that taught me a lot. So I worked at the roastery for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Starting, I think, like 6 months after it opened.
Okay, cool. So you were there for 3.5 years. How was it? What'd you learn? How does
my
it apply
gosh.
to you now?
I learned so many things. So I started the week of at the convention center, which for those of you who don't know where these things are, is like 4 blocks away from the Starbucks
Right.
Reserve. It had just opened, and there's like this big national coffee conference that was happening in Seattle that year, like a few months after it opened. And so my transfer was supposed to happen earlier, but it ended up happening the week that was going on. So they like threw things in my hands, or like, here, wipe down tables.
Trial by fire, yeah.
Very trial by fire. And there were a lot of people who were or partners who were temporarily there, who were temporarily there just for that event. And then I ended up teaching like the scheduling manager how to bus tables.
Help. Oh my God.
Yeah. And there was kind of an upper bar, which we called the Engine. Like that was the biggest production, like the retail area. And then there was the lower bar, which was like the experience bar, which had these kind of tables, but you had to like walk up to the bar to order, and the menus were only up at the bar, so it was like a little confusing. So just during that week, when people would just seat themselves at the tables downstairs, I would just grab a menu from the bar. I would like drop it in front of them because it was like kind of a different menu.
Yeah.
I would explain what was going on, how they could order. You're saying that I just implemented table service?
Yeah. Yeah. You said now this is full service, and you meased and applause.
I just made it happen.
Yeah.
Just out of, I don't know, delusion, trying to be useful.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it's broke, you got to fix it. Because otherwise people are like, what the fuck am I doing?
I mean, also, you do have to meet the guest halfway. Like, I love a sign that says wait at the door. I love a sign that says order here at the bar. And yeah, but you can't expect the best out of literally everyone, including myself. Sometimes I'll miss like the cues of what a specific restaurant wants. So if you're good at it, you might as well just mitigate and get in there.
Well, famously,
get the sale done.
Guests don't read.
I mean, yeah.
So
I often say the public can't read, and when I am the public, I also can't read.
Yeah.
Well, and that actually ended up connecting to this really wonderful mentor I had there, who is now a friend of mine and is absolutely brilliant in training. She's actually written a book on how to like create training programs and how to train people, which have been really helpful in my life in general. But when we were talking about our hospitality training, realizing that for us it's every day, and for them it's a once in a lifetime experience, and there's a lot going on, and you're overwhelmed, and you don't know the correct way to behave necessarily. So keeping that in mind, that like this might be a once in a lifetime experience for somebody else. Not just to like, oh, you have to be your best every day because this is, you know, like somebody's Disneyland, like not like that, but just in a trying to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah. So catch us up. How did you go from Starbucks Reserve to where you're at now?
So after all of the like the many programs and drink launches and learning how to be really fast and plaster a big smile on my face at all times, which were all very valuable skills that some did not make me horrifically happy. I did end up going to an independent shop that will remain nameless for many reasons.
Okay, cool.
But it was a place that I basically started as a barista, and then within I think like 6 months I was the coffee lead, and by a year I was the general manager.
Oh, damn.
Which sounds like a huge accomplishment, and it was because I held my stuff together, but it was mainly because everybody between me and the owner quit.
Oh, sure. Wow.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So yeah, a good sign. Green flag.
Yes.
You know, invaluable resume experience.
Yes.
Deeply traumatizing.
Sure. Yeah.
Aren't all invaluable resume experience has a tinge
Has
of
a
trauma.
tinge of trauma. But when I was working at the Starbucks Reserve, one of my mentor who I mentioned before, Ann Nylander, I'll say her name because she's amazing, and maybe you can find her book online if you're interested in learning how to write training programs.
Yeah.
But she said you have to go get, if you're going to work in hospitality long term, you have to get your hospitality battery refilled. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you have to like remember why it's important.
Yeah.
So after a couple of years, a year or two of working at the roastery, I found Foreign National, which was my hobby, was like my regular cocktail bar that I would go to
Yeah.
without my coworkers knowing.
Yeah.
I did not want my coworkers.
Your spot.
That was my spot.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, because all my coworkers would get wasted at McMinimans and talk about work, and I would go to Foreign National. I would talk about how they got inspiration for drinks, or how they made ingredients, or just taste things, and hospitality.
Yeah, sure.
But the other way around.
Yeah.
So that was my hobby for a while, and then Sarah McNally, who works at. She's now the manager up at St. Andrews, kind of in Green Lake.
Okay.
We worked together at the roastery. Mm-hmm. And then when I was working at that independent shop, I hired her away from Stampede Cocktail Club to come be a chocolate maker for me at the coffee shop that is nameless. Mm-hmm. And then later on, I ended up working at Stampede. So it's all very funny.
Yeah, a whole circle.
Uh-huh. And so when I got horrifically burnt out from that job...
Yeah.
I did a couple of gigs, basically like catering, or not exactly catering, just someone say, show up. I'd work for 4 hours, being somewhat smart and figuring out how to problem solve in the moment. Uh-huh. And then I took pretty much 3 months off in between leaving that job and starting in the bar industry, which I'd wanted to do for a while. I joined the USBG. I'd been going to meetings even before I'd consciously made the decision to leave coffee.
Oh, okay.
Partly because Sarah McNally brought it in, and then brought in Sonder of Century Ballroom and Maggie DiGiovanni back then of Barrio to come sit at my like coffee bar top. Mm-hmm. And, so there were friendships kind of building before that point. And then I backpacked through Europe for a month, and I spent all of my life savings.
Yeah. And then you're like, now I need to be a bartender.
And then I came back and got hired as a barback at Barrio.
How long were you there?
I was there from November 2019, because when I switch industries, I pick good times, to March of 2020.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah, what a good move.
What a great time to be a bar back. I can't think of a conceivably best time to be bussing dishes for your health.
Sure. Okay, so then the pandemic happened. Did you work through it, or were you laid off for a while? Or
so I was laid off. I think I went out to hide out like the night before like everything got shut down, because I'd gotten the call that I was laid off like one day before, because they were just minimizing everything before it was like legally, like everything has to be shut down. And Maggie had to call me. So like she was clearly very upset. And then the other bar back gave up his shift so that I could keep my job, because he had another job. And he was like, yeah, this is important to you. Like you should keep it. And I was like, great. So I went out at, I think I went to,
didn't want to work.
Yep. And I went to hide out that night. And then the next day, axe on everything.
Yeah.
And I, didn't have a job for a while when nothing was open, but I actually started at Stampede in June of 2020. Not through it, but early, pretty much as early as anything was open.
Yeah.
I was working, and it was kind of this weird situation where learning how to work in a bar in that very specific era, when like a lot of the best in the industry weren't working, and everything was bonkers, bananas, insane, and like the laws were changing every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I feel like I got a lot of experience in a really short period of time. Yeah, so for my first day, there were no menus. And then a good chunk of that first summer, it would be me and just the bartender. So I would be host, server, busser, kitchen,
Amen,
bar
brother.
back. And man, you had to learn quick, because you had to be really good at prioritizing different things. And
yes. But were you there when it was mostly like just to go drinks, or like you guys were like opening back up the?
Yeah, it was right when it was opening back up again. They made a post on the USBG website, and Stampede was one of a couple of bars in the city that I specifically wanted to work at, that I'd been a regular, because it was one of the few places in the city I could remember going in by myself, like it being really rambunctious and fun in there. The bartender still seeing me, still getting my drink, kind of inviting me to participate, and then being handed a drink and having it be one of the best cocktails I've ever had. Yeah. Because I feel like it's often you kind of get one or the other experience. Yeah. Like you can either go somewhere fun or somewhere that has really good quality. So like there's a lot of places that are like really upscale and really nice, and that's great, but it doesn't bring a lot of new people into cocktails as a thing. So having something where it's like, oh, here, have a Jello shot. Like, oh man, even the Jello shot is good. It's like, oh yeah, you like that? You should try a cocktail. Was kind of how I wanted to learn how to do things, if that made sense. Yeah. So Maggie called me out on that Facebook post of like, you should hire Kayleigh. And,
cool.
And I think I'd met Adam before at a USBG meeting. Jeff,
Adam Alley.
Yeah, Adam Alley.
Was he the bar manager at the time?
He was. It was him and Jeff Kelly. I had sat at Jeff's bar when I was thinking, like bar top on a Tuesday, right at open before everything shut down, when I was thinking about changing industries. And we'd had this like long conversation, which I really assumed he wasn't going to remember. And then Sarah had been the bartender who had seen me at the birthday party and called me out and served me a drink. And Paul was, of course, at the door at their first birthday party when I was there that night. And so everyone was there except for Jeff at my first interview. Mm-hmm. And for my second interview, I brought with me a clarified milk punch I had made because I decided to take bar smarts over quarantine.
Oh my god!
Oh my
Honestly,
god,
you're such a nerd like you are. You're curious. You are a curious little egg.
I am a curious little egg. I am a nerd. I also was going from an industry where I knew everything and I was a teacher to one where I knew almost nothing and I had lost my job and I didn't know the next time I was going to get a job and I couldn't get any experience in the meantime. So I just wanted to get knowledge and training. So when someone asked me for a Cuba Libre, I didn't look at them like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
I just wanted to
some
have
of those humbling moments will really push you to I don't know.
My line eventually became, I haven't made that one in a while. Let me double check and make sure that I'm making that right for you.
Yeah, no. Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
Well done. It's a canon event.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. It is truly. So for my second interview, I brought this milk punch. I was all ready to ask the question, do you guys have any hesitations about my qualifications? And literally I walk in, they're all sitting at the big table right when you walk
with that.
into Stampede. Well, no, it was in my mind that I was going to ask that.
Okay.
No, just follow with me on this journey.
Okay, sorry.
Walk in being ready to be all right, I'm going to convince these people either way if I don't know. I've got my milk punch. I've got my thing.
Yeah.
And I walk in and then Jeff just points me out and goes, oh, this person, I know them. Yeah. And then I think Adam Alley just turned to me and went, you're hired. They just needed to get approval.
Yeah. That's funny.
From the last, I was oh, I feel like I overprepared.
Yeah.
And then that milk punch sat in that fridge for, I think, 3 months.
You didn't drink it?
No, I left it for them to drink, and they did not, because that's what happens when you leave things at bars.
Oh, at
Nobody
bars.
drinks it ever.
And then did you go straight from Stampede and that group to being, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this. Are you a rep?
Yes, I am a distribution sales rep.
Okay, there you go.
Or regional rep.
Yeah.
Area rep, if you will.
Yeah, I'm really bad with the titles of the back side of the bar industry. I will learn one day, but...
I mean, we all also put different things in our, signature handoff, and different companies are going to kind of have different roles.
Yeah.
So yes, I now work for a distribution company that is in Georgia and Washington primarily, also little Idaho and Oregon. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what distribution is at all, I'll leave the very, very brief thing, is people all over the world make spirits and wine and non-alcoholic stuff. They can't ship it to you individually. So they work with companies who store, sell, represent, and distribute those things in their kind of local areas, because they can only have so many people who are the salesperson for that one company. And so Prime Wine and Spirit specifically has a portfolio that has a lot of specialty spirits. It has a lot of really small producers, and it has a really, really big non-alc book. And they were really ahead of the game when it came to bringing on non-alcoholic things and having conversations about them.
Yeah, and you said that's why you were drawn to them too, right?
Yeah. That was kind of one of the big things. And also kind of same thing when it comes to why I wanted to work at Stampede is my direct supervisor, Matt Rembold, who used to work in Ballard as a bartender before he got into distribution. I liked the way that he did sales because he knew the names of everybody who worked at the bar and when they were there and what they were interested in.
Yeah.
And he would bring them things that he was genuinely excited about and kind of lauding things about the people who were making these really unique things and why they were making them and how they were making them. And so it was very much about connection and kind of creating that network and education. And those are all things that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
And also there's a lot of reps who people are yeah, that's my rep. But there's not a lot of people who they're oh, that's my rep. I love that guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm
Very
okay.
Distinction.
Yes. If I'm going to learn how to be a rep, I want to be learning from the person who everybody loves.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you're doing maybe a pop-up with Adam Alley soon. That is an education on NA.
So I think it's organized through, we've had one phone call conversation about it, but
it's in the works, right?
Yeah, it's in the works. There's the USBG, I think specifically is the one that of course, that he's the president of here, does the Bartender U, like the education week, where instead of being like Seattle Cocktail Week, where it's just brands who are trying to sell their stuff, it's actually like educational content that is useful to bartenders. And so he wanted me to kind of come up and talk about how do you make an NA menu, kind of a lot of the similar things we're going to talk about today. Like, why do you make an NA menu?
Yeah. I mean, why NA for you? Where did that path start?
I have notes.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get too off track because there's a lot of different ways to kind of tell that story. It kind of partly started with my background in coffee. I knew how to run beverage programs based around things that weren't alcohol.
Yeah,
and so
which is really valuable.
So learning how to do things with alcohol was the thing that I didn't know. So it's kind of odd because even there's a lot of bartenders who have barista experience. Not a lot of people have coffee beverage development experience.
Yeah. And I will say though, having you point that out is interesting because I have Folgers and water experience and booze experience. So it's kind of I'm just saying that's like all I drink. I drink water, Folgers, and booze and orange juice occasionally. But
queen.
No. But like the only reason I say that is because like this is almost like a deficit that I like I feel it sometimes when I'm making like an NA, like a mocktail. I'm like, but sometimes I'm at a loss with NA and I'm not realizing that until now. Cause like I said, I don't drink a ton of NA beverages unless it's just like straight orange.
Yeah. I would not have the career that I have if making NAs was intuitive and easy.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
So essentially,
do it right.
Yeah. So Sarah Grindstaff, who was actually, I think, a rep for Seedlip for a hot minute around the time that I came on at Stampede, right when everything was reopening. There had been a couple of non-alcoholic drinks on the menu before everything shut down. The last Will and Testament, that menu was called. I can't believe I remember that. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was wild.
It's a deep pull.
Yeah. Okay. Also, was that intended? Like that was just like ironic that their menu was called The Last One.
Oh my god!
And then the pandemic shut down everything.
Oh my god!
But that is really ironic.
That is so funny. Yeah, it never even occurred to me in the moment because we kind of I think didn't know the grandiosity of what COVID was going to be like.
Yeah,
until deep enough in.
It's only going to be 2 weeks.
So there had been 3 cocktails on the menu before everything shut down that were non-alcoholic. And then because of my coffee background and kind of being hungry and having had an interest in, cocktails as a hobby, but not really like having any professional experience in it. Since I had the coffee background, Sarah Grindstaff asked me, hey, will you make a couple non-alcoholic cocktails? And back then, Seedlip was the only thing that was available. There wasn't really anything else.
Yeah.
And so I worked my little booty off. And I failed a whole bunch on a few different concepts that I had. And in that, I kind of realized that you can rip off your own work. No one will know.
Yeah.
So obviously. That is a nugget of wisdom that I wish I had learned much earlier on. Yeah. So at first it was just trying things and just continuing to try things and getting frustrated and linking back to this, that thing and the other thing. It was kind of in this era. After I presented those first drinks, they're like, okay, those are really good, but we're kind of actually not going to launch a menu for a little while. Or I think we launched one in between. And then on the next menu was the first one that we actually had like my non-alcoholic cocktails on the page. And it was 3. That was the Now That's What I Call Cocktails menu. And I think it was either in the development of that one or of the next menu that we had that I kind of figured out how to hone my creative process for work, because that's a thing that nobody teaches you how to do.
No, you got to figure that out.
You have to figure it out. But mine is pretty much, get inspired in whatever inspires you, like whether it's eating at different places or drinking at different things or like trying something that's outside of your comfort zone in any way. You can be inspired by, a color, like whatever, get inspired.
Yeah.
And then do some research. Learn about it, figure out how other people are doing things, figure out why people do different things.
And there's a ton of resources now for that.
Make an attempt.
Make an attempt. Amen, brother.
Make an attempt and see it through. See the attempt through. So like maybe you'll make something and it won't turn out how you want. And you're like, okay, let's figure out how to problem solve that and make it turn out how I want. And other ways you're like, oh, well, this is a happy accident. This is cool. What is this now? Inspire me to try next. And then you get inspired, and then you try and think how you might connect that to something else, and then you do research, and then
yeah.
That's always the thing I have an issue with, is that the failing part of it is really hard for me always, and then I would never be able to get past that part. Be like, okay, well, that didn't work.
Yeah,
and that's just something you have to start learning how to do, is like get inspired by your failure, basically.
Yeah, and figuring out how to like get processes, especially when you're trying something that is really new. I always say try the easiest method first, because I think sometimes we can get in our head and we're like, what if I did that and then that and then this and the other thing? And if the first way you learn how to do something is super complicated, you will never take the time to figure out if there's a simpler way to do it.
Yeah,
sure.
And there might just be.
But yeah, making sure that every step in something that you're doing is necessary is also good.
Yeah.
So that first menu got launched, and I fell in love instantly.
Good.
With NA. I didn't think what I made was particularly special. But then I got to see those things in a new light, through somebody else's eyes, of like all the bartenders. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so impressive. I don't think I could make a drink like that. And I was like,
oh, that validation is key.
Also, as someone who has tried a lot of your NA cocktails from the Stampede menu, my God, dude.
Thank you.
Holy shit. So good.
Well, also kind of the cool thing about working at Stampede, because I was actually a bar back for a year and a half. So even though I'm like, my career was in this weird trajectory where I was the Jello shot expert. Like I was the person who was making all of the Jello shots.
Oh yeah.
And that's how I taught myself about how to like balance cocktails. Because it was basically, oh, here's all this booze that we're not going to use anything. We're basically throwing it away. Can you make it taste good? And I was like, sold. Yeah. And I was also making all of the ingredients for drinks that were already established on this incredible menu, and learning all of these different methods of how to make things.
Yeah.
So I kind of got to learn all of that at the same time, so I could apply that new knowledge and equipment to future attempts. Part of the reason that I kind of decided to make the switch from the coffee industry to spirits was because of a couple of experiences I had at various different like cocktail industry parties, and how they differed from a lot of my experiences in the coffee industry. Because in coffee, it was always, you have to be the most on top of it. You have to get the new technology. You have to go to the new things. Like you have to like pay to travel and like go to all these competitions and stuff like that. And so you kind of already had to be privileged to be able to become successful and known. And it was always about keeping up with the newest thing. And also the baristas who knew the most detailed things weren't the best at customer service.
Yeah.
Because they would alienate people, right? Yeah. Like they would alienate people who didn't know what they knew, because it was really obvious to them.
Yeah, baristas have a snobby reputation for sure.
Yeah. And so
probably especially here in Seattle.
Especially,
oh yeah.
Especially here in Seattle, especially like when you get to like the higher levels, whatever that means. I'm doing air quotes. But then I went to actually I think it was either a Noble Oak party or it was a foreign national party. I can't remember which, but that's where it was. A lot of parties are like this.
What is going on?
And I was just talking to various different people there, and like cocktails had already been a bit of a hobby of mine, something I was curious about. And the way that good bartenders will light up in a conversation when you tell them something that they don't know about, because they're curious about it and they want to know more, and then they'll share what they know about it, because there's literally no way to know everything.
Yes.
Nobody does.
Yes.
And so if you're doing it right, like you can't get too pretentious about the things that you know and other people don't, because they know something you don't know. The spirit of curiosity and like at the end of the day wanting to make sure that like the guest is having a good time. Like, yes, we want to be intellectually stimulated in the things that we're doing, but we also are wanting to like instill a sense of wonder in the people who are coming to receive the hospitality, like either wonder or like just being taken care of or being intellectually stimulated or just like having a new experience with someone they're sitting across from. Like just breaking bread is a very human thing.
Okay, so that's kind of my question to you though, Nat, in this moment is, do you think that the big difference between coffee and say like restaurants and bars are that there is more of like an atmospheric or like there's a longer experience expected out of it? Because I mean, I just drink Folgers, but when I do go to a coffee shop, my interactions with my barista are like, hey, how's your day going? Good. Okay, bye. Thanks for the coffee. You know, like it's much more brief. There isn't like
it's both that it's very brief and the type of drug that caffeine versus the type of drug that alcohol are.
Absolutely.
Bring out very different qualities in people because until you give somebody coffee and it is before that interaction that you're talking to them, they're going to be agitated, grumpy, and in a hurry. And then after you give that to them, they might be perfectly lovely. But it's like also like really brief and you have almost like no time at all to to decide what kind of person the person in front of you wants you to be.
Yes.
With bartending, there's a little bit more time, a little bit more patience, a little bit more nuance, depending on the type of bartending. I'm like, that was most of my tangent on the coffee thing. It's just, it was a different industry, and I wanted to focus more on hospitality. I also wanted to not be broke forever.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so fair.
Yeah.
As a general manager of a coffee shop, I made $35,000 a year.
How many hours were you working?
40
Yeah.
or more.
My jaw has hit the floor.
So to circle back before we went on a million different tangents.
Yeah, we went on like 3 there. Yeah.
So we launched. Now that's what I had. Now that's what I call cocktails, and it had the 3 drinks on the menu, but one was like a matcha one was like a cranberry, spicy ginger kind of stirred type drink.
Yeah.
And then the third one, the third one was my. It was like a lychee, NA Jungle Bird. So I remember one day specifically, almost right after we'd launched that menu, I was, remember, not actually a bartender at this time. I was not behind the bar. So I sat this group of people who were clearly like coming from an office. There was like 8 of them. And it was clearly like a work happy hour. And with them is this woman who is so pregnant, like just so pregnant. And she looks so sad and so bummed and so ready to just have the most shit time while she's surrounded by everybody. And so I'm explaining the menu to everybody. They're laughing. I turn to the page with the NA menu. I lean down close to her face and I go, "These ones are for you." And her whole demeanor changed. She was so happy. She was like, "Oh yeah, everybody, these ones are for me. Like, F all you. Like, I'm going to have a good time." And then her drink came out and it looked incredible. And they're like, "Oh, I want to get that." And I'm like, "Nope, they're for her." And just the way that it completely changed her whole day, how welcome she felt, like what kind of side of her personality she got to show.
Yeah.
Like that was like a really significant moment. And there are a lot of other stories that I have of exactly like just having something when somebody isn't expected to be cared for.
Yeah.
And you get to say, "Hey, guess what? I thought of you before you got here."
Yeah. It's super important because I remember when I was sober for the year that I was, like you really notice like how much better you feel when you even just have that option. Yeah. Like, and it's just so nice to feel like you're included.
Yeah. Like I'm welcome here.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's like, "Oh, we have like orange juice for you." Or like, "We have cranberry juice. Is that okay?" It's like, "Oh, no, I want like fun.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think about or understand how alienating and lonely that feels until you're living in it.
Yeah. And mine was completely like, I put that on myself, but it's still like, oh man, I still want to have fun with everybody.
Well, you know what's funny is I saw that need and I saw like how it was important to people. And then when I did Dry January, it was like, I was so like myself, like I didn't drink for that month. I was so enraged at how unwelcome I felt everywhere. And it just really doubled down my passion for making sure that people have options.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole attitude towards NA, I got to watch it change in real time. So it's one thing that I can't really emphasize enough is when I started being really focused on NA stuff, like still learning about cocktails, I still made alcoholic cocktails and some are still on menus places. Everyone was like, "Who cares?" People would get actually angry when I would bring up that there was an NA portion on the menu and say, "Why would anybody want that?" And they would have like really big violent reactions. Like, this is just like 4 years ago.
Beyond yourself. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Oh
and I think, and I'm sure you experienced this in your period of sobriety, people feel judged.
Yes. Yeah.
And so they have a really big visceral reaction to that. But just as you said, like the number is now 95% of people who drink non-alcoholic also drink alcohol. Back when I started, I think it was like 70%. And then when I wrote my NA class for the first time, it was 80%. And so I think NA is just becoming part of how we consume as everybody is consuming less. Bars are not necessarily needing to see less business. They're just needing to cater to a new audience or cater to their current audience in a different way. So I remember when I finally figured out how to have the conversation when people had a really big reaction of, "This is stupid. Why would anybody want this?"
Oh my God, that's so upsetting.
So people would say, "This is so stupid. Why does anybody want this?" And I asked them one question. "Why are you drinking in a bar right now?" And they tell me all the reasons. I wanted to hang out with my friends. I wanted to be somewhere in public. I wanted to try something cool. I wanted to listen to the music. I'm like, yeah, if you were just here to get drunk, you'd be at home drinking vodka alone in the dark and quiet. But you're not.
No, there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah. So is somebody who's not drinking not wanting to experience all those exact same things that you just described? And that usually shuts them up real good.
Really
That's
good.
fucking brilliant. I am obsessed with that.
No,
that
it's
is
true.
amazing.
Look, you can't always make people think about other people's experience, but you can.
Because they just won't.
You can bring the horse to water, as it were.
Yeah.
And they can choose to drink or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say I thank you for all you've done for the NA business in Seattle, because during my period of sobriety was when you were kind of coming up on all of that, and it was very inspiring for me, and it was very it was really cool to feel seen and heard. And also after when I started drinking again, it like really made me want to focus on NA cocktails a lot more, and I tried to push for them like as much as I could in things and like find really cool ways to make new things. So yeah, it was very inspirational.
Crying over here. That's so sweet.
No, for real. Yeah, no, you killed it.
That's why
And continue to kill it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, and it's why I do it. And I think, you know, not to jump ahead too much, but a lot of people are like, well, Kayleigh, you're really killing it on making like non-alcoholic cocktails like in this one spot. Like you've gotten to do all these really cool things. Why are you leaving bartending? And it was partly just timing of a lot of different things, but it was also working for distribution gives me an opportunity to extend that experience to a larger group of people. Yeah.
Now you can do NA workshops and do those things. So I get it. It makes sense.
I can convince more people that it is worth their time, and it aligns with their values of like having a fun space or having a space of hospitality or including new people to come into where they're going to have these things. And I can make it easy for them to execute it well so that people might be inspired to look at it. Because further tangent, I'm a really big proponent of harm reduction. And I think there's a lot of people, like those same people we're talking about, who have those really like violent, really angry reactions, like the people who feel really judged. Part of the reason they don't ever want to have that conversation with themselves of like, why should I question my relationship with alcohol, is because they don't want to be separated from their lifestyle and their community and their hobbies. And that's really reasonable. But those things don't necessarily have to be linked with getting crazy blackout, puke yourself drunk. Like whether you just want to like minimize what you're having or have a little bit less or just have an option and know that you're still welcome and you can still be a part of things and participate, I think makes a lot more people in a better position to start having those thoughts. And then as that has grown, like we've seen the attitude change really significantly. Like it started with that first year, most people were like, why would you have an NA menu? But the occasional person would say, oh my gosh, you know who I should bring here? And it was always someone else they would bring there who wouldn't go out normally because they don't drink.
Exactly.
And so we got new customers, which was great too, on the business side of things.
That's good for you.
And then eventually it was like, oh my gosh, that's so great. And then people started coming in specifically for that because it was the only place that was welcoming to them. And you kind of got to see that grow. And then more people are like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Like, even if they're having it or not. So seeing that attitude change and that acceptance broaden
in real time, that's so interesting.
in real time, from a place where people just knew that they were guaranteed to be taken care of, because they were going to have NA drinks that were going to be just as good and that somebody cared just as much about.
And if you think about it too, it's so interesting because like we in the restaurant industry tout so much being like, we're hospitality forward, like we care so much about the people who come in, blah blah blah. It's like
except those people,
except for those ones who don't
want to spend any money. Did you give them anything to spend money on?
Like soda water.
Yeah.
Yay. I'm excited about that. Like,
that was the other thing with Dry January is I wanted to go out and have like a nice meal, and they're like, oh, you can have soda and bitters with it. And I'm like, I wanted to spend $18 on a glass of wine, but you don't have a non-alcoholic option for me right now.
Exactly.
And
people will.
Yeah.
People will. Also, non-alcoholic wine has gotten there, dude. It's good as fuck.
It's getting a lot better. That is a whole other tangent I don't have time to go into when it comes to wine.
But know that it's there.
But know that we're...
We wanted the tangent.
The technology is getting there.
It is.
Like I said in our last episode, Boca burger phase.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're getting there. Okay, so how do you build an NA menu? And also, I did read your Imbibe article.
Oh, I forgot. Sorry, I was gonna send. I was gonna
Yeah.
bring you
You
the
didn't
magazines.
send it, but it was actually really. I just googled your name.
Yeah,
and
it's also
Imbibe.
online.
Yeah, and it popped up. And I don't recall specific quotes, but I recall you like kind of talking about certain techniques that you would use with specific spirits. Like I think they were asking you about specific spirits, and then you were like, "Well, this, what do you call it? Analog?
Yeah, analog.
This is a good analog, or this isn't a good analog." Like, what's your like? How do you play with NA spirits? How do you use them differently from spirits?
All very good questions. So when I started kind of thinking about how to build NA, and there weren't spirits necessarily, I kind of already started about thinking about things in what the components are. There's a balance when you're making a non-alcoholic drink where you need to have acids, sugars, and bitters all present, and then you also need to increase the aroma because like 80% of your sense of taste is in your nose.
Yeah.
And alcohol is a flavor enhancer, and how it works as a flavor enhancer is that the esters that evaporate off your tongue when they hit your body temperature and go into your nose and go into the back of your throat when you swallow, which is called retronasal olfaction. You remember when you called me a nerd earlier?
Yeah.
Now everyone's
I was
finding out
literally
why.
going to call you one now. Nerd.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
So those are really big, important components of flavor. And then also the way something's going to hit like all across your palate.
Yeah.
When it comes to acids, sugars, and bitters, okay, so aroma, alcohol's already taken care of, which means you can replace one of those elements with alcohol. So if you have acid and sugar and alcohol, you got a sour, you got a daisy. If you have sugar and bitters and alcohol, you have an old fashioned, you have like a Manhattan, like those types of things. But because that alcohol isn't there, you need to have acid, sugars, and bitters present most of the time. Of course, this is a rule where it's like once you really understand it, you can kind of break it a little, and you can make things that are delicious, but they will be more divisive. Is the thing on that. So I figured that out because I was looking at all of my drinks and I was looking at all of the components of them and figuring out what each one brought to the table. It was a Word document.
Yeah.
It was Google Sheets, actually.
If you want to get real specific about it. Actually, I think it is a Google Sheet.
Yeah.
I don't have Microsoft Word. I'm not made of money. But yeah, it was that. It was kind of literally, I did that because I was developing. Wilderton hired me to teach a non-alcoholic cocktailing class for Sale Cocktail Week. And it was literally like a movie montage of me like pulling my hair and looking at every drink I ever made and like looking at books and like just like cry. Like literally it was all of that. And then I had the epiphany about the acids, sugars, bitters because I was trying to format the class and I looked at a class that I wrote when I was teaching coffee brewing essentials.
LOL.
And when you pull a shot of espresso, the order in which the components extract from it go acids, sugars, bitters, and then astringent. And you want to cut it off before the astringent because you need acids, sugars, and bitters to make it taste complete. And if you cut the shot off too soon and it's just the acid and sugar, it's like tart and it's sour and it's unpleasant. And it just kind of went ding, 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 ding. Because I realized I had all of those components in all of my NA drinks that I really liked. So that was kind of that moment. So looking at the ingredients that way also extends to when you're looking at things that are kind of like NA spirits, as it were, because they're kind of going to be used in a different function. So some things like Wilderton, for example, kind of get some heat from some people because it's really like perfumey is the word that people use. But that's exactly what it's for.
Yeah.
It has like different layers of aroma that are going to come through different drinks in different ways. And it's very intense on its own and very thin, but that's because it is meant to add something that is missing from a drink. And
Sorry.
No,
People always get up on Wilderton.
Yeah.
Because I like to use
it's one of my favorites.
It's one of my favorites to use in NA drinks because it adds like just something a little extra and different, like you were saying.
Yeah, it fixes that aromatics problem.
It fixes that issue, but people are just using too much of it. You can't be using like a whole ounce and a half of that
thinking
shit.
It's meant to be shot on its own.
Yeah,
and it's like there's no body to it.
Bit.
So you use that for aroma, but you got to put something else in there for body.
I'm usually like 1 ounce is usually where I end up floating around on that one.
Yeah, I used to generally like float between like even a quarter and a half just to like kind of
Yeah, depending on what else is in the drink,
Yeah,
like how rich it is.
But yeah, 1 ounce is the most I ever would use it for. But
so that's an example. And then there's things that are more like spirit analogs, or they're trying to mimic the flavor of certain spirits. For me, yeah, that's very Boca Burger. Like it's trying to be something else. But also like spirits are really wide things, so different people like different things out of it. So what they're looking for it to mimic in a drink might be different.
So by that, do you mean like, okay, bourbon itself exists on a huge spectrum?
Yeah.
So how are you going to mimic all bourbons in one?
Yeah. Like, or like, does somebody like about the bourbon, like this particular quality of a sweet flavor? Do they like the heat? Like, what is it that like that bourbon is in that drink?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you think about how cocktails were invented because spirits weren't good on their own.
Wait,
That
also
is
true. I forget to acknowledge that
so
sometimes,
true,
but that's
yeah.
so what happened. They
It kind of
"This
makes
is
it all make a
gross,
little
I'm
bit
gonna
more
put-
sense, right?
Yeah, I'm going to put milk in it. I'm going to put honey in it. Like, oh, maybe some fruit will make this taste better. But yes.
Right?
Yes.
So like when you think about it that way, it makes sense. So there's some analogs that kind of hit the mark a little bit. Some have like a spicy quality to kind of increase that like irritation in the throat, or piquancy as we call it, that kind of slows you down a little bit. There's other ways that you can slow somebody down as well. I'm not a fan necessarily of spicy in some things, except for the margarita I made you earlier had spice in it, and I think that is really good.
What did you use?
So that one, the spirit actually does have the spice in it.
Which one is it?
It's a Monday gin, or Monday mezcal rather. They have a Monday mezcal and Monday rum that we recently got on, and that's our first line of analog. So everything we've had other than that at Prime specifically has been non-analog. But then there's things like Pathfinder, which are kind of like a little bit like Amari, are really growing as an NA category. They help because they add sugar, which is a flavor enhancer. A lot of them have salt. A lot of them are actually hiding like different types of like malic acid or citric acid that are also actually helping to balance your drink, whether you realize it or not. And they can add texture depending on which one. Really just kind of looking at them as a component of the whole. I think is kind of the easiest way to use them now. There are different categories emerging, right? So we're getting kind of some more like non-alcoholic wine. Some are going to be like actually made out of wine. Some are going to be made out of wine and juice. Some are made to be experiencing that same thing. So the language is still evolving. And so it's a little tricky to find the correct audience with everything. And there's a lot of really bad stuff on the market. So that's also the tricky thing.
Yeah, you got to taste through a lot of
You
shit.
got to taste through it. I think that's one of those things people are like, oh, I don't really like NA stuff. I'm like, oh, I don't like 90% of what I taste. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. It's
not all good.
Most of the stuff out there is not that great, especially now that people realize that it's like a industry worth billions of dollars. Like everybody's trying to throw their hat in, and not everybody's doing that from like the best place.
Yeah, because they're not actually caring about what they're making. They're just trying to make money off of it.
So that's how you use NA spirits.
Yeah. There's going to have different things that have different names and call themselves different things. It is really just try it, kind of think about which parts of that kind of flavor pyramid they are representing and how they can be helpful. They also add a lot of value to cocktails, which is great.
Yeah.
One thing, some people will ask why NA spirits are so expensive is because you need like 5 times the amount of botanicals to get the same flavor payoff. So there is still value in that, even though like the alcohol some people perceive as the most valuable like ingredient in spirits. If you ask anybody who's like in spirits production, it's usually the botanicals.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The other question that I wanted to bring up, because you mentioned it to me the other day and I thought it was fascinating, because I was never good at science as a kid, and alcohol, it has different chemical properties than non-alcoholic things. And you mentioned something about the way it, when you like pour it over ice.
Oh yeah, some random tips and tricks.
Yes.
Alcohol lowers the freezing point in things in the same way that salt does. Like think of you have got vodka in your freezer and it's not frozen. So it stays like liquid at a colder temperature. So if you make an alcoholic cocktail, you can pour it over a big cube and it will just slide out off the outside of that cube. If you pour a non-alcoholic drink on a cube, it will turn into slush.
Oh my God, that always bugged me so much.
So you pour it next to the ice cube, and it might slush a little on the ice cube, but it'll eventually go away. And then if you have like 2 drinks on crushed ice and one's alcoholic and the other's non-alcoholic, the alcoholic one will slush on the outside, and the non-alcoholic one will just have condensation, just like a soda does.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Isn't that so fascinating? But it's something I don't think about the chemical properties of everything I'm working with.
I usually just pour it to the side. You also don't really need to dilute and chill NA things as much, so you can usually shake them a lot less.
Yeah.
There is a very fun trick that you can do by making a non-alcoholic like Ramos gin fizz, is because that egg, if you put egg white in like a non-alcoholic Ramos, it will get Ramos size in the amount of time it takes to shake a regular cocktail, not a regular egg cocktail, a regular cocktail. So if you shake it for like 30-45 seconds, you're going to get like 3 inches of foam.
Whoa.
Bartenders, another reason that you should love NA spirits.
Yeah.
It makes your job so much easier.
And it looks really impressive on the tray, and it kind of helps add some visual interest in a way that is like actually doable and not, the absurd.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. Yeah, because those are small things that, like, yeah, either you experience and you learn on your own, or like you get a nerdy book and you have to learn that type of stuff.
Yeah, there was one drink on my first menu, actually, Tarot in Vogue. It was a matcha lavender honey coconut cream spritz.
Yeah, sounds great.
Again, at the time, I was like, this is nothing interesting. Like now, I'm like, you know what? No, that's pretty good.
Don't gaslight yourself. That's
so,
amazing.
The other bartenders would try and put the soda in the glass and then top it. But you couldn't because it would explode. So you had to shake the drink, put it in the bottom, and then use a long spoon to pour the soda slowly. And then you would also get like this really lovely, like the kind of foam in like really fancy, like that people have to do with the whipped cream charger, where it's the big open, like airy bubbles. It was very cool.
To round out some of the NA conversation that we're having, where do you think, like we've talked about it on previous episodes and stuff like that, and I'm just always so curious about it. Like, where do you think the NA experience is going? Like, do you think that the market right now is ready for something like an NA bar? Or
yeah, I actually gave it some thought since the last time that we talked about it.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to do it, sure. But I kind of think NA just being kind of more, except again, like carrying on that vegetarian thing, is like, sure, there's a couple of vegetarian restaurants, but your non-vegetarian friends don't want to go to a vegetarian restaurant. But everybody wants to go to a restaurant that has good options for people who eat meat and vegetarians.
yeah,
And they probably are not even going to think about the fact that it has vegetarian stuff, because it's just everybody has vegetarian options.
yeah, that's a good point.
So I think we're probably more likely to see, like, definitely more like NA bottle shops like Cheeky and Dry and Finney, because they're definitely, like, as we said, there's a lot of things out in the market that aren't very good. So having a place where you can try things, you can just buy one can of something, you can try different bottles before you commit to these fairly expensive bottles.
Yeah. Also, I'll say that also comes back to what a restaurant is, as far as like it's an experience, whereas a bottle shop is much more like, why would you bring your whole gaggle of alcohol drinking friends and NA friends to a bottle shop, like when you're just picking off the shelf to take home, whereas like a restaurant is like more about the being somewhere with your friends.
Yeah.
And those types of things.
Well, the thing that's kind of interesting about, like, if you go to Cheeky and Dry, you'll see families with babies on a walk stopping in to pick up something. So, their parents can, like, the parents can enjoy like a nice little something or other. You'll see older people who like don't really drink anymore, but it's like, oh, we'd like to have something outside. Like, just people that you're not going to see in bars.
Yeah.
So I think there's like even broader of a demographic who's interested in NA than even the people that like we might immediately think about.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point.
Because our world is people who go to bars.
Yes.
I forget the babies exist sometimes. You ever forget the babies exist?
Always.
The time.
And you see people who are like, oh, I have to go do something like with my children. And you're like, children?
Wait, what is that?
Until proven otherwise, like literally everyone I meet, I assume is not a parent.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Like,
my default.
When I realized... There's also at-home. I'm not an at-home consumer for the most part, so I'm not going to bottle shops and stuff like that to bring stuff home with me.
Yeah, it's something that we don't think about because we just have access to those things all the time when you're working in the industry. But yeah, there's a lot of, especially the other interesting thing about being in distribution is like half my days in grocery stores. So it's also, I'm seeing the at-home consumer for the first time. And like really kind of getting to know, like, who are these people? How do they think about these things? How do they think about buying these things? What is enticing to them? And so I've gotten to see that as well. So it's actually been a really great experience of getting into distribution because I get to see a lot more kinds of people in the world. Yeah. Because once we invited the non-drinkers into the cocktail bar, you're like, there's so many people who I don't know. I don't know about.
Yeah. That's valid.
That's so funny.
Did we talk on most of the NA points you have, or do you want to?
I think so. I know you want to talk a little bit about like how my career actually kind of happened.
Yeah.
Which just like a lot of various different things happened in all the right order.
Yeah.
That first menu went so well and had really great response from the few people who were really into it. And then we had a general manager at the time who was fully sober.
Yeah.
So
which helps.
Yes. So there was support.
A lot of things.
From up top on that.
Yeah.
And for the record, I do drink. I'm just a miserable lightweight.
Yeah.
And I always will be.
Yes.
Always have been. And so I was a little nervous about getting into the industry as someone who doesn't drink a lot. I really enjoy cocktails. I love them so dearly. Like I really enjoy spirits and clearly nerding out about anything possible.
Yeah. Deep dives.
Yeah. So having a GM who was sober was actually really like encouraging to me. And then the NA assignment came about, and then we got to see the reaction to that, and then I was believed, and then we expanded it to 5 drinks on the next menu, which is wild. So the responses grew, and there were like little like Eater Seattle things that were talking about, this thing at Stampede, or like you should drop by for Dry January at Stampede, like kind of smaller pieces. And then I made friends with a journalist for Eater Seattle, Meg Van Hewen. I hope I say that correctly. Her articles are so fun. And she's largely like a food and culture writer. And she was at George and Dragon, but then somebody was having like a bachelor party that was like with her friend Mark, and someone's having a bachelor party or some kind of karaoke thing that just meant that they couldn't hang out there. And so they just came to Stampede and they sat at my bar at like a Monday night. And we just ended up chatting, and it was just like a really lovely conversation. And she ended up reaching out later on because she wanted to write an article about one of my drinks, which was, I think, Crystalline Dreams, which was my second clarified non-alcoholic milk punch.
So you made friends with this journalist, and then did she do like a full write-up?
Yeah, she did like a long write-up on.
I haven't read that one.
Drink.
Yeah,
it's very fun. And Elaine Cabellos, who's another one of my wonderful, beautiful mentors, is the person who helped me get an imbibe.
Right. Yeah.
So she went to Camp Run Amok, and she made friends with the editor there, who had heard about our NA program.
Yeah.
Because of the local articles about it. I was like, wow, that's people outside of Seattle. Like, seeing that, like, that's really crazy.
Yeah.
That people in different parts of the country have heard of me.
Yeah, no, it's a good feeling, huh?
Yeah, but it's also just kind of like almost surrealist because I don't feel that impressive. But Elaine was really helpful in helping me get published, not only in that she shared my information, but she made sure I had a professional headshot. She's so incredible.
It's also something you don't think about needing until someone points it out. And like, this will be helpful to you.
And when you need it, you do not have time to get one. You have to already have one locked and loaded. So that is one of those things that, like, I know it sounds kind of dumb, but like having a high quality photo of like headshot of you bartending is really important. Being really open to connection with anybody and interested in everybody is there. Like, going back to the creative process thing, like getting inspiration from people who do a lot of different things. Some of the drinks that I've developed, there's this book called Gazos that's about...
that was another question. What books you read?
That one was given to me by a friend of mine who's like a culinary expert who actually works in R&D at Starbucks headquarters, who I know from working at the roastery, obviously. I read a lot of like cookbooks. I like to get inspiration from that. I like to look at cultures all over the world because everybody drinks something. Tea, like different forms of tea, coffee. There's like so many cultures around, like just sitting down and having a little snack for no good reason, you know? So we all just,
that.
Right? Like we all just love that. Like that's just like a superhuman experience thing to do. I really love, I'm sure as a lot of people brought up, the Flavor Bible.
Yeah. Sure. I consult
vegetarian flavor Bible.
I have to get one from what I hear.
Yeah.
But that's also a really fun tool to use for if you're trying to figure out how to cross utilize like the same ingredients that you have in an alcoholic cocktail in a non-alcoholic cocktail, but you don't want to make the same cocktail. It's like, okay, well, pistachios go with apricots. So we've got that thing. It's like, oh, what else do apricots go with? And it's like, oh, I could do this like sumac. You know, like I could do something totally in a different. I don't know if those are actual flavor things. I just pulled them out
like,
my butt.
You just pulled that out.
But
of
I'm
your
actually
ass. That's crazy.
now I'm wondering. I'm like, I feel like sumac and apricot would go. Never mind.
Yeah. We'll look it up later.
Look it up. But also a lot of my sensory training from working in coffee, which sounds really pretentious to say, but you smell things and then you think about how they smell and you taste things.
That's always what I would train people I was bartending to do.
Yeah.
They'd be like, well, how do you know what goes with what? I'd be like, literally, this is going to sound so stupid, but grab both bottles and smell them. And just smell them at the same time. And if you think it smells good together, it's going to taste good together.
Yeah, because 80% of taste is smell.
Yeah. And people are like, oh, that's so weird. And then they would do it and I'd be like, yeah, see?
Well, yeah. And then you think about like textures and stuff like that. And like how things sit on your tongue is also another part of it. I think one of the best trainings that I ever did about a specific spirit at a Seattle Cocktail Week was Heaven Hill does a really good like mash bill whiskey class where they have you taste cornbread and then like mellow corn and then like a wheat bread and then like wheated bourbon and then rye.
Yeah, that's a cool experience.
And so being able to kind of have a more visceral experience with those individual ingredients is really helpful.
Yeah.
So that's also kind of a thing I recommend. I really like Mindful Mixology by Derek Brown. And I met him and he's really wonderful. And the way that we met was really fun. It was Seattle Cocktail Week. I had taught a class. He had taught a class. We met each other at his book signing. Both of us apologized profusely for not attending each other's classes.
That sounds about right.
It's like, I'm so sorry to make it to your class. And he was like, oh, do you mind if I ask like what were kind of like the points of your class? I haven't read his book. It's sitting in front of us. And I go through these kinds of points and his smile gets bigger and bigger. And I was like, oh, but I haven't figured out this yet. And he went, it was this, because he's a chef. We had written the exact same thing.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Just from your own point of view.
Just from our own like perspectives, we'd kind of discovered the same things. And I got really excited because I realized like, oh, there's universal truth in balancing non-alcoholic cocktails. So if I figured it out and you figured it out, like, but we just say it a little bit differently, then it is something that everybody can learn.
So are you going to write a book?
I thought about it.
Yeah. Like, why not?
But I'm like, I don't know.
Fuck it.
Maybe.
All right. You have a headshot already.
I do already have a headshot.
You just put it right in the
That's
back.
half of it.
Yeah.
I know. I'd need to get somebody to pay me to write a book.
Absolutely. Don't do that shit for
baby.
Don't do that shit for free, baby.
Well, I see myself like continuing to like be an educator because that's the thing that I'm really passionate about. I think that's another thing about growing your career that people don't really tell you is you have to figure out the things that you're passionate about. It's not just like what am I really good at and what can I achieve if I work really hard, but it's like what fills my cup.
Yeah, what feels good, in
my job. And so like finding people who want to learn and like lighting that spark of recognition when they understand something and like making it applicable and something they can like incorporate into their understanding of the world is like been my favorite thing since I taught classes in coffee. Yeah. And when I was a knitting teacher at Joann's.
So do you have any classes planned or nailed down, or they're still in the works right now?
Still in the works. Okay. Unfortunately, I wanted to have like a really like concrete thing before we recorded, but
no, when you do,
we'll share it.
When you do, let us know and we can
we're excited.
Put it out there on Instagram or
and perhaps we will even attend.
Yeah. And then you write your book.
Yeah. I'll let you guys know. I'll remember you when I'm huge.
I want a signed copy. Okay, so have you been in a walk-in before?
I have.
Have you done things in them? Like
I have not.
Cried?
Well, yes. Yes, I definitely have cried in a walk-in.
You thought I went straight to the...
You were making a face.
Have you fucked in a walk-in? Okay,
straight to the nitty-gritty.
I think I am.
No, am I in trouble? What?
No, yeah. I'm calling all your old employers, actually.
No. So I can think of two examples that are at least fun stories in retrospect that both happened at Barrio, which we talked about earlier, which had a little walk-in. It also had the casita, which is one of those backroom storage that you have to walk through a parking garage and upstairs to get to.
I hate that.
It was horrifying.
And so there were two things that went wrong in this short period of time. Now, remember, I was 27. I just changed careers. I just spent all of my life savings on a month-long backpacking trip through Europe to find myself because that's what you do.
Did you do it?
Yeah.
Nice.
We'll talk about that.
You
another
feel
time.
found?
Yeah, I feel like I did it. I cried listening to a podcast in Paris and had to throw out my shoes because they got soaking wet. So I feel like that's
from your tears.
No, I threw them out. Yeah, I cry right on my feet. No, I threw them out in a trash can in Amsterdam.
Gotcha.
So funny.
Okay, so
Because they hadn't tried yet. So anyway, changing industries, terrified about everything. I think it was like my first or second ever shift not shadowing somebody else, and there was only one bartender who was like very quiet, very serious, very like fast. And we were getting slammed, and I had to go change the keg.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm about to have the exact same story that you did.
Yeah. Knowing glances, it just rained on me. It like exploded up into the top of this. Actually, I guess there was a walk-in in the casita. I forgot about that, where the beer and the things are carbonated. And it just shot up. And I'd been shown how to do it. I'd done it successfully a few times with supervision, and it just shot up to the roof and just rained down on my head. So I took a couple deep breaths. I remembered that I'd been to therapy.
Yeah. You did your square breathing?
Yeah, I did my square breathing. It was only when you tried to put it in that it would explode up, and then it would stop. And so I tried like 4 different times. Like they're waiting on a beer up in the bar. There's one bartender who's literally getting it handed to him.
Yeah, tapping his foot, waiting.
Yeah, well, and like far away. It's like it's far. Like you could do it in 45 seconds if you power walk, but it like takes at least that long.
Yeah.
And then it's on top of that all this time. They're absolutely getting slammed. I go out and I have to tell this bartender who I'm super intimidated by, I'm like, I can't figure it out. And he like huffs for a second. He's like, okay, well, can you look up the specs on this drink for me? Because somebody had asked me for something I didn't know how to make.
Beautiful.
And so, you know,
like a good bar back you did.
Like a good bar back I did, and I had it up and I had it ready for him there. And then he comes back without a word, like pours the beer, like makes the drink, all this kind of stuff. Like we get through the shift in total silence. I'm sure that he's pissed at me. And I like am just like trying to keep it together. Just like the tears well in my eyes. And I was like, hey, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry about the beer. And he just went, oh, shit was broken.
Oh. My God.
For hours. I was just
you're like thought that he was mad at you.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's not my best friend. He's an angel.
Okay, so
except for that time he scared the shit out of me.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm glad that keg was just broken.
Yeah, I still can't pour a good beer to this day.
And then your other one, you said you had 2.
Oh yeah, and the other one
is this the banana one?
Actually, yes, because that's a better story.
Okay, let's go with the banana. Let's go with the banana.
Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for the call.
Yeah, we said we would circle back.
I've been waiting for it.
You've been waiting for the banana one.
When can I bring this up?
Okay, so this was a drink that Adam Alley made, and it is one of the most delicious cocktails I've ever had, I think. But the prep gave me a full panic attack.
Sure.
And it has launched many ships of my rage and ranting when people have developed menus going forward from there. So it was called Diamond Season. And it was a clarified milk punch with a Lambrusco float on a hand-cut rock.
Do you cut it to order?
Oh, no. Those were also cut in advance. It did take me about 2 hours a week to do that, to cut like 60 of them.
Yeah.
With a hammer and a bread knife.
Okay, and a bread knife.
And a bread knife.
Huh, okay.
And a dream.
Yeah.
And some cut-proof gloves.
Okay.
But that is not the part. That is not the part that brought me to tears. Before you make the milk punch, you had to make the banana sesame oleo saccharum.
Yeah.
Now, if you've ever tried to make a syrup out of bananas, they're very starchy. And they're very sticky. And you can't really blend them. And then sesame seeds are also very small, and they really like to gum up the works of various different things. And so Adam developed this syrup, and on a small scale, it worked great. You'd cut up a couple of bananas, you'd put some toasted sesame seeds in there. The flavor was absolutely incredible. You put some sugar, leave it, and from a quart of bananas, you would get like a cup of syrup. From 8 quarts of bananas and sesame and sugar, you get a cup of syrup.
Yeah. That sounds like a problem.
How much went in each cocktail?
Well, then you had to put that into the milk punch.
Oh, Jesus.
That you then had to clarify.
Oh.
But yeah, so you couldn't really get anything out of it. And they're like, oh, you just need to press harder. So they put the coffee filter in like the big, huge, like metal sieve. But it wasn't a chinois. It was like huge with like larger holes. It was like,
those ones.
I'm like, I don't know how to express. It's like 2 feet at the top. It's like wide.
The big metal.
Big metal guy.
Yeah.
With kind of the bigger holes, not like a net. Like lined with a coffee filter with all of this syrup. It's like you just have to like press down harder. So put a coffee filter on top of it, press down on it. I was like, I can't do this. Like, Adam, it's like, it's not coming. Like Jeff Kelly was also there. He's like, no, you just got to figure it out. And it's like, I hadn't worked with him long enough for them to know that if I say something is impossible, it's impossible. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that I don't want to do it. It's not that it's hard.
It's not gonna happen.
It cannot be done. And so they're like, oh, you just got to press on it harder. And then so I'm like pressing on it harder. And then I can't remember if it was Adam or Jeff, because they both gave it a go. They broke the big metal. They fully broke it. And they went, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
this
what you
can't
meant.
be done. But yeah, so thank you for teaching us today. And when you have your next class, like, truly let us know. We'd love to attend / promote, whatever.
Yeah, for my class that I'm planning on doing for USBG, I'll definitely
And
make
today.
one. And today, I did bring
Thank you very
some
much. They
today.
were lovely.
Yeah, that was fun to just whip together. Because eventually you do get to the point where you can whip together an NA drink just as intuitively. I also,
Yes.
mind you, have a really crazy supply of different NA things, because people give you what you love. And also, it's my job.
Yes,
Sure.
yes.
But Pedro Jimenez sherry vinegar, one of my favorite little snake
Yum.
things.
That sounds so good.
Oh, I do have one tip that I did want to share.
Sure.
The right amount of vinegar for a cocktail so that it helps add
Mm-hmm.
that throat feel, but doesn't taste like a shrub that you can't have more than one of, or taste like vinegar, is a bar spoon. 1 bar spoon of vinegar. There's a lot of really
Like
fun
per cocktail?
per cocktail. And so there's a lot of really fun vinegars that add a lot of depth of flavor. I love Pedro Jimenez sherry vinegar because it's like, it's nutty and it's got dried fruit, which is like a lot of like nuance that's hard to get otherwise. Like, I've used red wine vinegar, champagne vinegar. If there's a wine of it, there's a vinegar equivalent, and that's some great
Yeah.
flavor that you can be adding in. Seasoned rice is really great, also to add a little bit of salinity if you need
Yeah.
it. So I use rice vinegar in my gin martini, non-alc.
Yum.
Wow. That actually sounds really
Oh, I
good.
want to try that.
It helps a
That
lot.
sounds so good.
Yeah.
I'll send you the recipe.
Yeah, please.
Oh, I love NA Spirits conversations. Thank you.
I
for
know.
This has
It's been a
great.
trend for us. So
Thanks for having me. I've been so excited about like being on a podcast. My
Good.
parents are thrilled.
Oh my god!
I can't wait for the
Wait,
link.
Will your mom listen?
Yeah. My mom and dad
Hi,
will
Mom.
listen. Well, I think you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah. Thanks for
we love it.
coming.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, anytime. We'll do it again too sometime.
Yeah, honestly, if you ever want to talk about something else, just
The
tell
things
us.
I know about Jello shots.
There
Dude,
you go.
honestly, we
whole
can have a
episode.
Jello shot episode.
We could.
Yeah, you both are experts. You guys
Yeah.
can teach
Yeah.
me. I'll just...
Yeah, I'm curious your fashion for making like 400 in the span of a couple of hours, because I got mine.
Yeah.
How to balance the flavor, the whole different ballpark.
Yes. Yes. Mine was usually just hope and a prayer.
Oh, no,
And a lot of gelatin.
You looked like there's pain in your eyes though when you said hope and a prayer.
There is, because of the time that I was nicknamed Jello Sock, because I spilled an entire batch of Jello shots in my shoe. And I had Jello Sock the rest of the day.
But I bet your feet were so moisturized.
Yum.
and sticky.
So
All right,
sticky.
y'all. Don't forget to drink water.
Drink water. Thanks, Kayleigh.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Crying in the Walk-In with Sam and Kai. Check out our website at cryinginthewalkinpod.com. Check out our Instagram, cryinginthewalkin_pod. Thanks for listening. Make sure you drink water. Love you. Bye.